Hi everybody, this is going to be my final short video for you guys before the end of the semester. We're almost at the end and I've got to jam a lot into the very end, I'm afraid. I've been really sick the last week, so I'm sorry I haven't been very responsive, but I'm back on my feet, and so I'll be back to grading your essays and your reflections and different assignments. I hope some of you used the respite over Thanksgiving to catch up with work that you were behind on. I'm expecting you all to be done by mid-December. I shouldn't give you that nebulous a date, but the last day of finals would be the last date that I will accept any late work at all. Most of you have gotten everything in on time. I really appreciate that a lot because it really speeds things up for me in terms of getting your grades done. And I have to wait till the last assignment is in before I can post everybody's grades. So if you could all be really conscientious about getting everything in, it'll help everybody out. I wanted to talk just briefly about your number 7 assignment. Thanks, most of you got it all in. It'll take me a little while to score all that. But I hope you realize that the purpose of that assignment really was to show you where you can find data about your students. Your school site will always have data available, and they should have data available for you, but it's not always apparent where it is. But you can find data all over the internet, and very timely data and excellent data that will help you with your students at your school site. Part of that too was not just the effect of finding data, but also the effect of what does the data mean and how do we use that data to drive questions that will help us to make decisions about the best we can do for our students to help them learn and achieve in our schools. So with that said, I hope you've also been noticing things in the news that really are a reflection of the kind of themes that we've been exploring in this class. For example, climate change. You may have heard some of the reports about the number of Puerto Rican students who flooded into the Florida school system because their schools are inoperable. The numbers of teachers from Puerto Rico who are in the Florida schools now, being attached to the schools and finding ways to utilize their skills as all these kids come north. And the possibility is that Puerto Rico will not be rebuilt as it was because it's so expensive. It's been so devastated that we'll see if those students and schools return to Puerto Rico. But these kinds of changes, for example, in Houston as well, these kinds of changes that move students about and move them to new districts and to new areas, these are the result of climate change and the effects of natural disasters as well. Also, you should be watching the news about the impending strike. This is a teacher union issue in Fresno Unified. And what are they striking over? First of all, the classroom environment, how many students are in a classroom and what kind of discipline can be imposed. How do you maintain order in these classrooms? And how do you make them effective for students to learn in? Also pay issues. And finally, very interesting, teachers demanding more of a voice in how students are taught. And I think you'll see this directly related in your last set of readings in the Teacher Wars, the last 2 chapters. They're kind of dense, but get through them. There are only 2 questions really to answer for them, but I strongly suggest that you read through those chapters rather quickly, but for a lot of information. I think that this book, The Teacher Wars, is really excellent in sort of outlining all and framing all of the issues around teachers and education that will be part of the landscape for a long time and certainly be part of your careers. Okay, now I wanted to also get to the 2 issues on multiculturalism and racism and white privilege, because these are both kind of touchy issues. Multiculturalism, first of all, multiculturalism, we talk about multiculturalism and being multicultural schools, and really it's more than just having a food fair. It really is a misunderstood concept, and because it's misunderstood, it's often seen as an attack on American values and the American culture, which we're all part of. And So it's important for you to understand exactly what is meant by multiculturalism. It doesn't mean that we denigrate American culture or that we downplay its importance in our students' lives. After all, our students are going to have to live in the United States. Actually, most of them will become adults in the United States and work and grow and have their own families here. And we do have a very distinct culture, and we do have distinct values. And they are different from other cultures, and they do demand some change on the part of other people. That doesn't diminish the fact that we, as Americans and as educators, shouldn't understand and know what the cultures are of the students who are coming to us and how we can best help them make this transition without denigrating their own cultures. So there's a question for you in terms of this particular box in the template. And the question, let's see if I can find it. Oh dear, now I can't find my question. Let me go back up here a little bit. Here it is. Okay, here's the question. Number one, what is multiculturalism and what are the demands it places on us? You might want to write this down because I didn't print it in the box. What is multiculturalism? What are the demands it places on us? And the second part of the question is, name the subject you will teach and briefly discuss what more you need to know to be able to teach with a more multicultural mindset. I'm going to repeat that for you. Name the subject you will teach and briefly discuss what more you need to know to be able to teach with a more multicultural mindset. Okay, I'm going to read the whole thing one more time. What is multiculturalism and what are the demands it places on us? And the second part, name the subject you will teach and briefly discuss what more you need to know to be able to teach with a more multicultural mindset. Okay, the next topic is also an extremely touchy topic, and that is the topic of racism in schools. Racism in our society, we are not in a post-racial society, as some people thought after President Obama was elected. We are the inheritors of a very sad tradition of racism stemming from the slavery that was promulgated in all over the United States, actually. And it is part of our culture, part of our heritage, something we need to overcome. But it doesn't involve simply Black students or African American students. It also involves Hispanic students, Asian students, Native American students, all cultures. And there, of course, is racism that goes both ways. We can't deny that. Nevertheless, the most predominant form of racism is against African American students and Hispanic students because they're the two largest groups. There also is racism against Asian students and other groups. So the readings that I've given you are really brief. In fact, for this whole course, everything that I've given you have been brief little overlookings of all of these issues, nothing very in-depth at all. And I hope that many of you will explore some of these areas in much, much greater depth on your own. But you're going to read a bunch of articles, about 5 articles. They're not hard to read. They're pretty fast and simple, and they will give you some ideas about racism and white privilege. And then you have really one question to answer after reading all of them. And that one question is, why is it important to understand white privilege? It's going to give me an indication that you understand what white privilege is, but this is not something that's answered in the article specifically. You really need to read them in the aggregate and think thoughtfully about why it's important to understand white privilege. So once again, that's the question for the final box. Why is it important to understand white privilege? After that, there is a box for you to do a final reflection in. that final reflection, is going to be scored fairly rigorously. I want you to really be thoughtful about it, thinking through your ideas. What were the ideas that you came to these topics with, and what have you learned, and how have you changed? And or even, what more do you need to know? That's all part of being reflective and thinking about how you're learning and what you're learning. As I've said before, you know, it's really difficult to go into depth and into so many of these topics that have such a huge impact on the decisions we make in our schools, not only as teachers in our classrooms, but as school systems and as policy decisions within a school district. So keep all of these things in mind as you go into this career. It's a very demanding career, and it expects a tremendous amount of each one of you as you go into this, in terms of being sensitive in so many areas, and being very thoughtful about how you choose to teach, what you choose to teach, and how you choose to make those relationships with your students, how you choose to promote rigor with your students, how you propose to make everything relevant to your students. Because really, ultimately, what comes down to is, do you know your subject? Is it important for you to be teaching kids this subject? If so, how do you convey that to them? And how do you maintain that relationship with them that shows that you care, that they learn to appreciate and understand the importance of the subject as you do? So good luck to all of you as you continue with your teaching careers. And please contact me if you have any questions. I'll be contacting you mostly individually from now on until the end. Have a Merry Christmas, by the way, and take care.